Imagine this for a moment. You're playing cricket, or football, or baseball, and for that matter, soccer. It's a beautiful field, and you're right there, and the soccer game is going on, it's very intense, and it looks like you're winning. And at the same time, you find that you're a ferocious opponent on the other side. And you're just about ready to kick the ball into that net. And you can hear the sounds, and you can hear the people, you can see the boundaries, you can see the goal post, and you take that shot. You're absolutely certain that you've got to go. But guess what? As you look up, there is no net, there is no goal post, there are no boundaries, there is no stadium. And you say, oh my God, there's nothing over here. Just the team. And as you look out, what you see is just the green fields, beautiful, but you cannot see the end. It is absolutely, beyond a certain point, invisible. You can see it up to a certain point, but then it just goes to the horizon. It's invisible, it's boundaryless, it's amazing, it's large. And you say, what is the reality? And then suddenly you turn around, and I come here today and say to you that each and every business is digital. Each and every worker is digital. And anything you buy, any product that you make, any services that you render or you receive are digital. Absolutely digital. And then I bring you to the third reality. For the longest time, we humans have known that the trade, commerce, communication, civic engagement were all localized in little areas, all on the land that was occupied by the hunter-gatherers, communities at large, until such time that the Greeks really came about with this idea of nation states. And then a few thousand years later, or a few hundred years later, it is immaterial, the Egyptians and the Nordic Vikings brought innovation to the sea. They built these fancy boats and could conduct trade and communicate across the ocean and the seas. And as time went on, Wright brothers in 1903 flew for the first time. And by the year 1920, not too far away, almost 100 years from today, came the emergence of what is now known as the Dutch Airlines. It was the first global international airlines that were established. People could move even more across the oceans, and they were able to communicate, conduct trade in a more expansive manner, as well as getting modern civic engagement. In the meantime, in parallel, there was a brilliant entrepreneur, Henry Ford. And in 1908, he put forth his Model T. And that opened further communications capabilities over a large, expansive piece of land. People could move. So now we land up with 4 areas of communicating: vehicles, terrains, lanes, whatever you may call them, through which people could move forth, communicate with each other, conduct commerce, trade, and get more civic engagement. Now suddenly, let's bring all of these things together, all 3 of those things. We have now emerged and have certainly realized that beyond what Yuri Gagarin did in 1961 as the first person to enter the space, there is the 5th domain, the public cyber. Think about it. It is invisible, it is boundaryless, it is unimaginable, it permeates everywhere, Actually, cyber is a prefix of the word cybernetics. It means technology, equipment, network, etc. put together. And universe on the other side is something that you cannot see. You know of it, it exists. You know of it, that it is part of every matter as well as unknown reality. And when you combine the two words, CyberUniverse, or cyberverse as it's called often, now it becomes a new playing field for people to communicate, conduct commerce and trade, and get involved in civic engagement as well. And it is that much more powerful for those who grew up in an era where this was available to them. There are about 42% men and women in the world out of 7.3 billion population that are under age 25. And in this era, what you have is the power of this huge mass of people, people like you who can be and will be the leaders of the future. 25 years from now, by design or by default, those who are under 25 will be presidents of countries, prime ministers, judges, lawyers, scientists, preeminent people in their own vocation. But they have to work in all the 5 domains. And who knows what the 5th one will be. But you have a competitive advantage that generations before you did not have. You have a world, a universe that has opened to you with technologies available. And the first time I got aware of that was when I was in government. It was post 9/11. I was in Washington, D.C. in 2002. And I quickly realized that as the CIO and CFO of the United States Peace Corps, that, oh my God, all these computers can be hacked, they need to be secure. But at that time, all I did to secure them was to have stronger access to the computer room. And as time went by, months and a couple of years, we realized that our computers were being hacked. Some 16-year-old sitting somewhere in the world would crack the code and put the data. It was a fun thing to do initially. By 2006, I realized, as the CIO for the state of Minnesota, where Governor Pelletier asked me to join his cabinet, that no, that's my #1 priority. And in a couple of years, we were hacked left and right, and I was constantly defending why we are losing public data. Last week, Anthem, an insurance company based out of Columbus, Ohio, if you don't know about it, had the largest attack. 80 million records, pieces of information of people, clients, customers, and even employees were hacked. Sony Corporation, not too long ago, had a huge international event. So in your world, for those of you who are under 25, you've got to see the world in a much larger, expansive, socio-economic, geopolitical perspective. Because there's an economic perspective, and you will have entrepreneurs like Flipkarts of the world and Mark Zuckerberg of the world who will come from nowhere and come up with an innovation, an idea, and build companies that are larger than life, employ hundreds of thousands of people. But there's also a social impact. Lives will change, how people communicate. There is cyberbullying happening, there is cyber theft happening, there is cybercrime happening. You build, have an IP, it gets stolen, some other country. And by the way, there are nation states who are doing that. There are rogue entities that are doing that. There are rogue countries that are doing that. They want to get your data and information because there's money in it. So you have no choice as leaders to think about that, the socio-economic component of it. You've got to think in geopolitical terms as well. It took Twitter to create what is known as Twitter's revolution. Can you imagine just a handful of words and thousands of people come together in a public square and create a change? That's just the tip of the iceberg. And you have the power to use that capability that you have to do great things. Because those of you who are under 25 will be the leaders of the future, and how you use this domain, this terrain, this invisible universe will determine what the world will look like. It is your time, ladies and gentlemen, and I say to you that it's not just worrying about the challenges, the fact that you have to defend yourself all the time, but also the human component. Because cybersecurity is not a technological problem, it's a human problem. So those of you who are specializing in human relations and the human aspect of corporate America, government, or companies, have to recognize that that has been part of the critical thinking as you enter the world. And those of you who are in marketing need to realize that sales cannot happen anymore without e-commerce capabilities. Companies will go out of business. And that was evident when Amazon.com emerged from nowhere. The bookstore model was abolished. So that will happen. So HR professionals will have to recognize the human piece of it, internally and externally. Likewise, those who are marketing and sales have to realize the power of the capabilities they have in the cyberspace. The strategists, the scientists, and the doctors, the availability of enormous amount of content and knowledge all over the world that can be drawn upon and used to mash up and do things that we could not do, the generation before you could not do. We are still faxing data and information. You get with a click of the mouse, transfer billions of dollars across any nook and corner of the world. You can conduct commerce, you can interact. At the same time, you can fall as well. As I saw firsthand in my own backyard Target Corporation, one of the Fortune 500 companies had a huge breach. 40,000 records of customers were violated and stolen. The CEO was too slow in reacting. Guess what happened? The CEO was fired. And the stockholders got very angry because the stock price went down, and they said, 7 of the board of directors, and that's totally unheard of, must leave. They cannot get re-elected. Though before they worked out the situation and they stayed on. But the companies, so the corporation, their stock valuation has gone down because they were unable to protect the information and the data, which is what your major asset is. And as I said, we are all digital. Humans have become digital. In the last 1 year, the biggest area of threat that we have is medical devices, whether they're implants or used at the point of care. That's huge. Something that we need to worry about because there's a human component to it. The design, the ones who are in information technology and are technologists and scientists, they need to understand the architecture from the very bottom of it. And as we speak, President Obama is on his way to Silicon Valley to talk about this threat. Last year in September at G8 conference, somebody asked him, a reporter, what do you think about the threats these days? He said the number one threat is cyber threat. Not terrorism, loose nukes, nuclear devices, proliferation, and terrorism. So those are the 4. But the number one was cyber threat. So on one side of the equation, you have these threats, and on the other side of the equation, you have opportunities galore. Because the field that you are playing in is invisible, boundaryless, large, and you can do anything you want to, from good, bad, and ugly. But the leaders of tomorrow have to decide. The 42% of the global population in the 25 has to decide as to what impact they want to have in the world. The world and the universe is in your hand. Make something of it. Thank you.